Welcome on into Daggerheart characters. I am in the middle of creating Vecna, Henry, and I just have the very roughest of outlines of what I plan on doing in terms of the classes. Outside of that, I got started, I'm a little ways in, and I'm like, you know what? Why try to remember at a later time why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, and instead just go right on through it as I create the character. So as you can see, I have started on the character, but let's go through it. So I am going to start out with the Bard because I think that the Grace domain and the Codex domain are both going to have some cards that are essential to who Vecna is. And I'm speaking of Stranger Things Vecna, by the way. I'm more familiar with that than any other version of Vecna that may exist out there. And, of course, going to go with the wordsmith, not the... I don't think Vecna really plays the guitar or anything like that. So that's going to make more sense going with the wordsmith. With the Bard, we of course get our rally dice. Spend 3 hope to temporarily distract a target, give them a -2 penalty to their difficulty. I think that could make some sense for Vecna's ability to kind of infiltrate the mind. And then for the wordsmith, we have our... there we go. We get Rousing Speech and Heart of a Poet. So nothing here that just like absolutely screams, but flavor-wise could be perfectly fine for the very charismatic being that is Vecna. Who's obviously, he uses his charisma in so many ways throughout the series so far. As at the time of making this, Volume 1 of Season 5 has come out, not Volume 2, and I'm not familiar with what happened with the Broadway show, so I don't know those aspects of Vecna, and I don't know exactly where they're going in the series with Vecna, so there could be some things there, but am aware of the upgrade to Vecna, which we will definitely, is why we're going to have to get Sage Domain, we're going to have to get some Thorn Armor on this beast, and we will make some of our decisions to maybe increasing our strength and our agility, getting a little bit more physical. Because to me, how I interpret this upgrade to Vecna is that he realized that he's quite vulnerable physically. I mean, specifically, a little human being was able to tear away a little piece of his flesh, and he dropped everything at that point. So, he's come back more physically imposing for a more physical fight. He's prepared to be more than just working from behind from behind the sidelines. That's not the right term that I'm trying to think of, but he's just more prepared for a fight in the real world against weapons. We obviously see him going up against some guns and everything that probably wouldn't have gone so well in his previous form. And so I do want to capture that too once we get a little bit later in this build. But early form Vecna, definitely full of presence. Knowledge is going to make sense. I went with Instinct here. They suggest Finesse, but I think Instinct's going to make more sense. And it's also going to work with a different decision that we end up making once we come to our Heritage decisions. And I did take a -1 in Strength. I think at that point of the early Vecna, that's probably his biggest weakness. Maybe it would be Agility. I don't know. Ended up grabbing a Scepter for the weaponry, so that's a two-handed weapon that can also work up close, but we're going to, at least in terms of this point in the build, we're probably going to want to stand back a little bit more, so also grabbed some Gambeson armor. I don't think I'm going to go into changing up the weaponry or the armor later on. That's going to take some time to think about, look through things. So I'll leave that up to, how that would go in the game. But this is where we're going to start out. It doesn't matter what we're grabbing here. And for the domain cards, this worked out perfectly. Book of Ava, going to make a lot of sense. They come from a cold world, so Ice Spike also makes some sense there. Could have been a route that we would have gone with our Heritage. But the Power Push is very much a Vecna type ability, and having this Teva's armor should be helpful. And then I knew we were going to have to grab Enrapture. I mean, you just think of the ability that he has to Vecna people, definitely enrapturing them, and kind of taking control of their essence in those instances. So I thought that those two made a lot of sense and were perfect fits and much better fits than anything else that was available. When it came to the Ancestry, ended up deciding to go with a mixed Ancestry. I had never seen Aetheris before, was very interested in this. Of course, the description of what an Aetheris is, I wouldn't quite call Vecna a descendant of a Celestial, but we have this divine countenance, I think is that is. You have advantage on rolls to command or persuade. That is so Vecna. So we needed that. And then, you know what? We've got the hive mind going. So the other ability that I chose was not divine, fungal network. So fungal. So we are part ancestry, part fungus. You know, I think we can ignore the ancestry in terms of just reflavoring this into what Vecna looks like, in terms of how we want to appear in game. But the fungal network, once again, will build off of that instinct too. Make an instinct roll of 12 to use your mycelial array to speak with others of your ancestry. On a success, you can communicate across any distance. This made a lot of sense to me, so I guess we will hold on to, because we're also going to go into the Sage domain, so we will probably hold on to this earthly connection to the fungal network as a part of, you know, who we're speaking with in terms of who our ancestry is, what our ancestry is. The other half of our ancestry, we might want to make that a little bit more human than what this divine countenance comes from in terms of the Aetheris, or not. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm off base on that. Whatever. You get the idea there. And then I ended up going with Freeborn here, another one that I'm less familiar with, as I'm not out on here all the time, but I know some of these have been out here for a while from the Void. And what the Freeborn is going to do and make sense, especially when you think of the name Unbound, you think of Henry's escape from Papa, who I believe Henry viewed as being a tyrannical type of ruler within the facility, and I think that this makes a lot of sense for him. In terms of at least where his mind is at, of him becoming, you know, more free once he escapes, or for his attempted escape. So Unbound, once per session, when you make an action roll with fear, you can instead change it to a roll with hope instead, which obviously, you know, that's a very helpful ability. I'm not going to go through choosing the experiences. There are a million different experiences that you could definitely pull from, especially if you're more familiar with the lore of Stranger Things than even I am. You know, and I'm a fan. I'm not like a super fan, but I've watched it all. Love it. Very entertaining. For the second level up options, going to increase the traits here, and I just went with increasing the evasion just because we're not going to be kind of investing in our hit points, at least early on here, so I thought that might be helpful, and I didn't see an absolute need to go elsewhere. I didn't see a need yet to grab more than one domain card. There's really just one that made sense to me at this level. If we're really trying to stick to the capabilities that we see in the show compared to expanding off of them to something that could be possible, which does limit us in some ways of what we could choose, and obviously you wouldn't have to do that. But then I increased our presence and the instinct again, because we are going to be using that. And for the domain card, I went with Troublemaker, Tell No Lies. I mean, obviously that could make sense, but Book of Vargas comes just not necessary, I don't think. It doesn't make the most sense, and we will... when we're gonna go into 2 new classes with this build. I think we can do 2 class, right? Can we multi-class twice? Maybe not. I hope so. That's the plan. For the Book of Sigil, I don't think you can multi-class twice. Oh boy, I'm gonna have to make decisions. We have this Adjust Appearance, Parallel Illusion. Yes, I mean, we know that at least like number 8 has the ability for illusory abilities, and I'm sure that they all have some untapped ability to potentially tap into that type of thing, maybe. But nonetheless, not exactly Vecna. I mean, he definitely adjusts his appearance within dreams and everything, but I thought Troublemaker would make the most sense. Use that presence in order to cause stress upon others is definitely... you know, his outwardly presence, if not his words, at the very least, always can be stressful for those that he comes up against. Then we gained a stress slot and increased our traits again. I thought he is pretty good at kind of staying hidden, so we invested in the finesse and invested in that knowledge yet again a little bit more. He seems to be the intelligent type, not a dum-dum. And so for the domain card selection, invisibility, I haven't really seen that. Hypnotic Shimmer, you know, that you could make that make sense. And I do like this Mystic Tether ability. That would make a lot of sense in terms of something that he can kind of do. But fire isn't really, you know, an upside down feature, kind of something that I don't like. But the Book of Corvex is really nice. Levitation makes a lot of sense. You can temporarily lift the target. You can see up into the air and move them within close range of their original position. I mean, we literally see that at the end of episode 4 happening, right? And the levitation part we know is an ability that he has. And then Recant, Rune Circle are just going to be some nice things that we can have here that don't fight with anything that we know of what Vecna can do, I don't think. So those will work nicely. Brings us on to the 4th level decisions, and then that's where I decided I would film. Once we got up to the 5th level there, for the 4th level, took another stress slot. We do have a couple abilities now using stress slots, and increased our experiences. I think Vecna definitely pulls from his experience, and his experiences definitely shape who he is. So I thought having those being a strong part of us definitely mattered. I thought of taking the Clank actually as the other part of my half ancestry in terms of having that purposeful whatever it is where you get to add a +1 bonus to one of your experiences to start out with. So wasn't opposed to going that route. So that's the route that I ended up going there. And then, of course, through your eyes, very Vecna-y, being able to see through others' eyes. We see that a lot here in Season 5 going on, types of features like that. So through your eyes made the most sense to me. Soothing speech obviously could make sense. Like, if he was your ally, we even see him using his soothing speech along with what's her name, 11, when she's younger, in order to help manipulate her. So in a manipulative sense, soothing speech could definitely make sense. But Book of Grin, I like it, except it has Wall of Flame. And once again, we could take it for these two things and just never use Wall of Flame, or we could just use Wall of Flame and say, too bad, so sad that it doesn't match up exactly. But I decided not to take an extra domain card, and instead invest in those experiences, in part because of that, and then create a construct. I mean, I guess we could flavor that into a Demigorgon, right? So that would be a route that you could go, and I think interrupting a magical effect would make enough sense with, so that could make a lot of sense here, if you wanted to go that route. So I guess there is another option. We could have easily reflavored that into a Demigorgon. Just thought of that. So that is going to bring us on to level 5 where we're at. Let's just move this up to levels 5 through 7 here. So at 5th level, I am going to multi-class. Yeah, we can only do it once. So, I really wanted to multi-class into Sorcerer, and there's a lot of great things there. But we need that Thorn armor. So we are going to end up multi-classing into something that's going to give us the Sage domain, and that's going to take away our ability to defeat. So maybe we do this at like 6th level instead. Why don't we just, for now, we're not going to multi-class quite yet. We will increase our traits and probably our evasion. We'll come back to that once we look at the domain card options at this level. 5th level, isn't that? I think Thorns is a 5th level card. Oh well. So we'll increase our presence and our instinct here. We might end up investing a lot in traits in the short term here. And then let's see if these domain cards make sense, or maybe we'll multi-class now. Thought Delver. Okay, perfect. So Thought Delver is very much a card that will make sense, that I was thinking of taking. Manifest Wall, that sure seems like in Season 5, maybe that could make sense. But Thought Delver, I think, is a no-brainer option. Words of Discord, not as perfectly flavorful with our abilities. So we'll grab Thought Delver now, and then at 6th level, let's see, what do we want here? Do we start investing in our hit points, start making ourselves a little bit more tankier? Do we increase our evasion one more? That's tough. Let's go evasion one more. We haven't upgraded yet, so I think it makes sense to wait on the strength upgrade till 7th level, because now we will probably... Let's just see what the 6th level cards are here. Share the Burden, I do think could make sense for Vecna, definitely. He does share the burden across others, so that would not be out of question if we were to grab an extra domain card or have to come down for new domain cards at any point. Banish could probably be some good flavor. Sigil of Retribution. Yeah, these things could definitely make sense with however you want your Vecna to be. But for now, I could have chosen there. We will multi-class, and we will multi-class once again into something that's going to give us the Sage domain, but Blood Hunter would make a lot of sense. A Sorcerer, obviously, would make a lot of sense in either domain, really, for the Sorcerer, if you wanted to go with what am I trying to think of for the domains there? Obviously, Arcana and Midnight domains. But, and Witch could make some sense, but I looked at the Witch abilities, and I didn't really feel like they quite felt too Vecna-y. Of course, Wizard, you could make that work if we had started with something else, but we don't need the Codex domain anymore, so we'll be alright without that. Warlock maybe could make sense. I don't know. I don't think so, but depends where the story goes. But I think Druid... I think Ranger is going to be the route that we will go with this. Going to make a little bit more sense than Druid. Going to give us a little extra damage that we can do, so we will grab that Sage domain. Vecna seemingly does have some sort of connection to Earth. I mean, he's got, always had vines around him, uses vines. There's the symbiotic, the fungal network, so to speak. There are the kind of roots and thorns that he has across his body. And I think that Wayfinder is going to make more sense here for the abilities than Beastbound. Although, once again, you could give yourself a Demigorgon animal companion. That would make plenty of sense as well. But now we're going to become more physically imposing. And Wayfinder is going to help us with that in terms of doling out some more higher amounts of damage. Not just messing within the mind. So we are going to have to wait for probably till 8th level till we can get those vines, if I remember correctly. Vicious Entangle, though, of course, would make plenty of sense. That would be very Vecna. I mean, a Gifted Tracker would be pretty Vecna, but I would say actually our heroes use kind of their tracking more than we see Vecna doing that kind of thing. Of course, we talked about going back down to 5th level. Natural Familiar, I mean, I would say that's less so, getting a Demigorgon. Conjure Swarm, and we'll get our armor, I guess, in a little bit. I think it's going to be 9th. I think it's not until 9th level that we're going to be able to get our armor. So, okay. You know what? We will take Vicious Entangle. I think that's going to make plenty of sense here. Once again, Share the Burden could also make sense, and we have invested in our stress, but that's going to bring us on to 7th level, where I think we'll start our transformation, get our traits and our hit points up at this point. Am I not thinking of something? Domain card, an extra domain card might make sense. Let's see what the domains are. Yes, so we're going to need the Book of Hamet. Pass Through, Plane Gate are both going to make sense. I think a lot of sense. So there we go. We take the Book of Hamet, and let's go back, increase those traits. We will now increase our strength, and I think our agility. I mean, yeah, we're just going to become more physically able. So let's do that. And then that's going to go on to our 4th tier, levels 8 through 9 decisions. Once again, choose your experiences on your own. And we will, of course, I say of course, but we'll increase our traits and maybe our hit points again. I'll have to go back and look at the subclasses, see if there's anything that we need from the subclasses. I'll make that decision after this. We'll increase our presence. I think we're going to also increase our strength one more here. Just to be more Vecna-y. That's where we're at here. And then we will choose our domain card. We're not going to have 5th level Sage domain cards yet because we need 9th level for that. We've got Safe Haven, Mass and Rapture. Let's see here. Book of Viola, Memory Delve is going to make a lot of sense. We already have a memory ability. We have several, actually, that we can use. Shared clarity. Once again, sharing stress. I think that that's going to make the most sense for us. Astral projection could make sense. Have we actually seen him do... I mean, he does in some ways. That could make a lot of sense, too. So, either one of these would make sense. This is cost a hope, which is fine, and spellcast, so it's not costing us any more stress. Whereas astral projection does cost us stress. We've stopped investing in our stress. We still don't have a high demand on our stress necessarily, but I'm going to go with the Book of Viola on this one. I think that's going to make a good amount of sense. And does that bring us on to 9th level? Yes. So let's go back to our classes, our subclasses, see if it makes any sense to specialize in, not Maestro, specialize in Eloquent. Your moving words boost morale once per session. When you encourage an ally, you can do one of the following. Allow them to find a mundane object or tool they need. Help an ally. It just seems too helpful. He's not really a team player as much as a manipulator and like cult leader, I would say, than team player. So not for the bard, but for our ranger, we are trying to become when your focus makes an attack against you, you gain a +2 bonus to your evasion against the attack. Well, that wouldn't be bad. Definitely wouldn't be a bad ability to have. So we'll keep that in mind. All right. I am curious what our evasion is. We got a +2. What's the starting evasion of a bard? And actually we have a +3 with our armor. So we're like 13, that'd get us up to like 15 when we need it. Not bad. So at 9th level, we are able to go get our Thorn Skin, which is going to be a spend a hope. Sprout some thorns all over our body. When you do, place a number of tokens equal to your spellcast rate on this card. When you take damage, you can spend any number of tokens to roll that number of d6s. Add the results together to reduce the incoming damage by that amount. If you're within melee range of the attacker, deal that amount of damage back to them. And we don't mind dealing that damage back to them, so we definitely want to be within melee range some. Also, let's see here. Master of Craft, increasing our experiences. Once again, could make sense. Disintegration Wave. Not quite something we've seen, but I wouldn't put that past, Vecna having some sort of ability to do something like that. Transform into an inanimate object, internal aberration, whatever. We're okay without some of those. So I am going to upgrade our subclass, and I think we're just going to get a little bit more beefy now. We're going to be fighting up close instead at this point. For our 10th level, I do think Transcendent Union could be a domain card that would make enough sense. But I might just go back down, and honestly, I'm thinking of just grabbing the Death Grip, which is pretty nice. Pull a target into melee, force them to mark more stress, which we definitely have some abilities where we force creatures to mark stress, all adversaries between you and the target. We could do damage across a group of adversaries. It's only one stress to pull out. I'm going to go with Death Grip here. Yeah, that's still, I think then we're for sure staying within Vecna as we know Vecna as of the time of creating this character. Once again, obviously you could go for some of those more high-level awesome abilities instead, but I think we're capturing Vecna at this point. We've got that increase to our evasion, so I think we might as well increase our evasion one more, and we'll probably just beef ourselves up a little bit more as well. By the way, we went with the Wayfinder for the upgrade to our subclass. So there is our character. Why don't we go check them out? I will actually, before we do that, I will choose an armor and weapon for this guy. All right, so here is VH1, Vecna Henry number 1. I ended up going with the Ghost Blade, which is going to allow us to choose whether we're doing physical or magic damage, and I think that makes sense with the current version of Vecna. Seems very able to do either one of those types of damage at this point. Then I grabbed for the second. That's a tier 3 item. For the second tier item, went back since that's a one-handed weapon, the Ghost Blade. I grabbed the improved round shield, so something that I might have just picked up earlier, going to give us a couple of extra armor slots, which is going to work nicely because full fortified armor only comes with 4 armor slots, but allows us to reduce damage by 2 thresholds anytime that we use an armor slot. So we get 6 of those heavy duty armor slots, which is going to make sense with this, increased bulky look of ours. Our evasion goes down by 1 there, but compared to the Gambus in armor, but we still have 13 evasion, and we have that ability from our ranger when we have somebody in our focus for our ranger's focus to get a +2 bonus to that evasion against an attack from them, so that will be helpful, as well as in being able to increase our damage. So we're not the highest damage dealing, but hey, at least we can buff that up. Would have been something to think about. We could have, at the end there, instead improved our proficiency by 1, but, you make some decisions, you make some choices. So here's our major and severe damage thresholds. We have 9 hit point slots, 8 stress slots. We've seen where we ended up there for our, what are these called? For our traits at 10th level. And yeah, we saw everything else. So we have, I think, a pretty cool set of abilities that we can do. Don't forget, we've also got these little things working for us, as well as Unbound, helping us to gain some hope. And yeah, that's going to be our Vecna.